Hey, Star Wars fans, Nate Custer here, alongside my buddy, my pal, Mr. Jake Scott.
What's up, guys?
And this is the second episode of The Force Geeks. Jake, we made it through one. We're on
Yes,
episode
sir.
2. A lot of podcasts stop after one episode. So here
Yeah.
we are.
So we've made it past that big hurdle.
We're at least committed enough for 2 weeks worth of content. So we're at least that committed.
Absolutely. Well,
All
I
right.
have to be committed to something, right?
Oh, totally. Hey, you got a lot of years of marriage under your belt.
Yeah, what
you're
is
a
it?
family
Gosh,
man.
18 or 19 now.
Totally.
2001. Well, you were there. You remember.
I was there, and it was a great time had by all.
Yes,
Only
sir.
thing would have made it better is if you guys had shown a full screen of Star Wars movies in the background. That's the only
know
way to get
what?
better.
My wife really doesn't like sci-fi, so that probably wouldn't have been.
Both
wouldn't
of
have
us just
flown.
stringing our wives along for Star Wars, just wishing they would love it as much as we do. I get it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just get right into things. Last week we had a little bit longer episodes. So this week we're going to do a little bit shorter. We'll get right to it. And who won the week this week, Jake? It's got to be the Baby Yoda type species. This thing is just the cutest.
Well, I think we're okay saying Baby Yoda because Master Filoni has says that Baby Yoda is an acceptable title. At least that's what I've heard. So I'm gonna stick with that because he gets to
Dave
say
says it's gospel, and
Yes.
I take David his word on this.
pretty much. So he says Baby Yoda's good to go. So that's where I'm going. But yeah, apparently the merch is dropping everywhere, which doesn't surprise me.
I haven't seen any yet, and I've gone out looking for it. Target, Walmart, all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm looking for it. I apparently can find it somewhat online, and initially it was just like a couple of T-shirts you could get with
Yeah.
Baby Yoda on it. That's just not enough for me. And this, I get why they did this, Jake. I totally get it because they were protecting the secret, and it takes a long time
Yes.
for a product line to get out. It's like,
Yes.
I don't know, 6 months, maybe a year, something like that. There's a lot of
Possibly.
work that goes into it. So I get it that they
Yeah.
could not go to the toy manufacturers. They couldn't go to the merch.
Yep.
Because they were too worried about the secret getting out. I think it was worth it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the payoff is there, and I think that we're going to see more payoff as time goes on because there's so much secret there. One thing I noticed was that to me, when the Mandalorian confronted the Doctor to get Baby Yoda back, he asked, "What did you do to him?" But then that was it. He would have been asking more, but obviously they can't show us, right?
And you know what? You just tripped on something really heavy right here because a lot of folks are like, is it a male? Is it female? Dr. Pershing refers a couple times to him.
Ian, yep, he's just
It
a
is
child.
a male because I was confused about it for a moment. It was only on the third viewing that I caught on to the fact that he said he.
Yeah,
Because the whole time I was like, I even wrote it in my show notes. I'm like, is it a male? Is it female? And the third view, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I watched this the third, fourth, and fifth time. To be honest,
Yeah.
I watched it 5 times this latest episode.
I'm only
just
at
because
3, so
this was a tour de force, this episode, and we'll get to why in a little bit, but we know that Baby Yoda is a male, and I got to tell you, when I'm looking at this episode, definitely my favorite so far. I love the walk through town. This is like set up like an old spaghetti western, how this whole thing is coming together. It's very like badass showdown kind of material. The Mandalorian, we know, is not to be trifled with, but I just
Nope.
love how this all works out because it's very like world building because one of my biggest complaints from the new sequel trilogy is not enough nostalgia when it comes to the older aliens because I want to see those
Yep.
types. Like, we haven't seen a Rhodian in the new sequel trilogy yet, a Greedo type alien. We haven't
Yeah.
seen one here, but we've seen one already in The Mandalorian.
Oh, tons. I mean, Rhodians are well known to be, heavy into bounty hunting, specifically along with Weequay and other races that we saw during that final scene there where the Mandalorian's trying to escape. I mean, that was like a veritable smorgasbord of alien creatures. I mean, there was even an Iridonian Zabrak. I think it was Iridonian. It didn't look Dathomiri to me. So, the guy with
That's
the horns.
I thought it was a Dathomirian. I thought it was a type like we've seen from Maul. I thought it was a Maul type because they don't all look like Maul as far as the skin tone is concerned.
Well, I could be wrong here, but I thought that the red and black and the facial tattooing was more common in the Dathomiri Zabraks, whereas
Yeah.
the Iridonians from Iridonia aren't necessarily into it as much. I don't
Okay.
know. I'd have to look back on that.
I'm going to go with you on this because you're a better expert on this. You're more well-read, so to speak, than
I
I
have
am.
read
So
a
I
lot,
trust
for sure.
your instincts on this. Okay, so I thought it was Dathomirian, but whatever. I can move on from that. I did
It's
see
a
something that
Zabrak.
reminded me of 4LOM or 4LOM, whatever to call them, For Love of Money,
Yeah.
the bounty hunter. I saw one of those in there. I thought
Yep.
that was pretty cool. Maybe it
That
is
was
4LOM.
cool.
I don't know.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we ever really found out what happened to him, so it could
He
be.
was a bounty hunter, and it is a bounty hunter guild, and he was after another bounty hunter, so it could have been the
Yep,
Forlong. So I don't know. Um,
absolutely.
so getting to this, really nice job with the Star Wars building. I have been waiting the world building of Star Wars, and this is really, I think, taking even more root with seeing more of the bounty hunter guild in effect with this and being
Yeah.
around that kind of Mos Eisley concept that we've seen
Hmm.
working since the beginning. I'm really glad they're incorporating that because it is a nostalgia fest for me, and it's frankly it's what I've been hoping for ever since Disney took it over, that they would pay respect to the past and not feel like Kylo Ren and killed the past.
Yeah. Well, it's nice because, so much of Star Wars, Star Trek, all that stuff is so idealized. And this is really gritty, and raw
Yeah,
and
totally.
real. It's like, this is what happens on the edges of civilization when people don't have a lot of rules. This is how they act, kind of thing. And that to me is awesome. I
Laws.
like that.
We have no laws here. I love it. I love just
Exactly.
that Wild West mentality. It works
Yeah.
so well
We don't
for
need no
Star
stinking rules. Exactly.
Wars. All right.
Yep.
So, also speaking of throwbacks in the Star Wars world building, is something that has been really fun to catch, and that is actually that we saw it in the last episode, I believe. Maybe even the first episode, can't quite remember, but at least I know episode 2, where we saw that Jabba's palace throwback to the doorbell security system. And what a
Yes.
cool scene!
That was from Return of the Jedi when
Yeah,
C-3PO and R2-D2 went to the door to present themselves as gifts to Jabba so that Luke could get in to get Han. That same eyeball thing came out and spoke Huttese and was just really generally obnoxious,
it's
just
just
like the one you
cool.
saw today. I loved how the Mando walks up and tears it off the wall and then leaves and waits for the stormtroopers to come out. That was awesome.
Totally. It was a good time. I loved it. It was a great way. And again, the Mando is a badass. We know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of badasses, not to jump on this phrase a ton, but I think I have to. Big Mando, John Favreau. When I watched
Yes.
this, immediately I knew when I heard his voice, oh, this is Favreau. He's
Yep.
making his cameo, and what a way to do it as
No
that
joke.
heavy infantry type of Mando. It was so cool. Plus the getup he's got when he comes in later on with the heavy weaponry, that
Yep.
looks a lot like the type of weapon that Baze Malbus was using in Rogue One. That heavy duty firepower that seemed
Yep.
like it's the same type of weapon.
Yeah. I really liked that scene a lot. It reminded me a lot of the Clone Wars series with
Yes.
the Death Watch, very similar to the tactics you would have seen there. They were very heavy into the jetpack usage, and I really liked that. I think that mobility is key because, not everybody can afford Beskar armor as a Mandalorian. Some are Endurasteel, and it doesn't handle the same way Beskar does.
Right.
Interesting thing about the Beskar, because it's been such a huge thing, and this is just me being a total nerd idiot about it, but,
Air it out, my friend.
yeah, the Camtono of Beskar that he gets after dropping off the Baby Yoda. I looked at that and I kind of guesstimated the dimensions of those ingots. That's like 120 pounds of iron if it's the same density as steel. So that's a pretty heavy damn container. And it's way
totally.
more than you would need to make a suit of armor.
And they lifted it with no heft whatsoever.
Exactly. Which, I mean, they have repulsor technology in pretty much everything.
Oh, there's that. I forgot about that. There's that.
Maybe that's the point of the Camtono container, is
It
to
could
make
be.
things more light. I don't know. But I looked at that and I was like, hey, if steel is 8 grams per cubic centimeter and these things are this big, then how many? There's 19, 18 of them in there. And, I'm a dork. I can't help it. But
This is how Jake's mind works, everybody.
Yes.
The life of a scientist.
The
That is his
scientist.
background.
yeah,
He's a scientist, everybody.
more biology, but I have tried to learn a lot. I'm interested to get into the biology of the Baby Yoda, too, because I really have a lot of thoughts and theories about
What
what
do you
they're
think
doing.
they're trying to extract? What do you think they're trying to extract? Is it midichlorians?
It could be midichlorians.
I hate
I
to go
thought
down
it
that
was-
route, but is it midichlorians?
It could be. I don't know that they can be extracted. And I don't know how faithful they're going to be to the extended universe stuff when it comes to the limitations of cloning force-sensitive beings and how the force itself, in a way, fights it and makes it not work because the Emperor tried
Corrupts it.
Yeah, it's corrupted by the presence of the force, and they have to use other means of blocking the force, like Isalamiri on special trees, because they create these
Right.
force voids. So
I remember those from the Thrawn trilogy.
exactly. So I don't know, how faithful they're going to be to all that stuff, but I think getting midichlorians would be interesting. But I'd have to wonder, like, what would the First Order want with midichlorians?
That's
Like,
a great question.
what are they after? Because these
Does
guys
it
are
tie
obviously
into the new movie? That's the big question. Does it all tie in to Papa Palps coming back at this point?
well, we know
Palpatine?
Palpatine was all about legacy and lineage
Yes,
and making sure that his
defeating
vision,
death.
yeah, defeating death, exactly. And when you get around to reading Pelagius, you'll see that that was an obsession of his as well as his master,
Yeah.
but not to the same extent, I guess. But I'm very interested to see how that happens, and I'm curious how it's going to tie in with the new movie, just because of the thoughts about, in particular for me anyway, and I don't know why I'm connecting this, but Rey's parentage and where she's coming from. I'm almost kind of starting to wonder, maybe is she born from the Force like Anakin was? But we can talk about that.
We will definitely get into that. Probably not this episode, but another
Yeah,
episode, because we have
pick
plenty of
that up
time leading
later.
up to Rise of Skywalker. So there's something else I want to get into, and this is some of the things that I really enjoy, because I know how much Jon Favreau loves the Mandalorian culture. A big part of that's
Yes.
because that's the character he played with
Yep.
Pre Vizsla. I mean, he got
Yep.
into it because of that, and then teaming up with Dave Filoni. So when
Yep.
you team up with Dave Filoni, who's a big world builder, especially when it comes to the Mandalorians, he loves that culture. It's one of the things he enjoyed about the Clone Wars, is getting deep into that culture. But you see some of that building out, specifically with the blacksmith. And it's interesting because this is one of the
Yes.
few female characters that's on the show. So far, there's
Yep.
not a lot of women involved, which I'm hoping something's changing. I'm not one of those people out there like I need a lot of diversity or something like that, but I
No,
do
but
respect it, and I would like to see. There's women in the galaxy, right? Where are they? So it's nice.
yeah.
One of the strongest is a Mandalorian, which I think is very cool.
Well, you saw on Disney Plus the cover art for the Mandalorian has more than just the Mandalorian on the front. There's a
Right.
woman there too,
Gina
and I have to
Carano.
wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to wonder: is she the chick in the armor? Is she the armorer, or is she a different Mandalorian?
I don't think so, because in the
Yeah.
background I've read about this, Gina Carano's character, she's playing a former rebel shock trooper. So
Okay.
I don't think the Mandalorians were taking part in the rebellion. I mean, it's not to say that they won't build that out later on to say that they were. But
Yeah.
as far as we know, the Mandalorians, they talk about in this episode that they go up one at a time. They live
Yeah,
under
they're
the
hiding.
sand. And that's, what Jon Favreau's character was talking about there, is the big
Yeah.
heavy duty Mando. So that was really interesting. I think it's interesting too that basically it looks like the blacksmith is the leader of the entire clan that's there
Of
on
that
that
covert.
planet.
Yeah.
And it makes sense with their religion based upon
Absolutely.
weapons and armory.
Yep.
That it kind of makes sense that why wouldn't it be the blacksmith that is kind of the leader, because they're the one that has the most knowledge when it comes to building the armor.
Yeah, and the armor to a Mandalorian is everything. I mean, they made it very clear. Have you ever taken your helmet off? Has anyone else ever taken it off? Like that armor is your life for them. So
Absolutely. It was cool to see that. And she's really the one who's kind of informing us about the culture and what it
Yep.
means to be a Mandalorian. And this is the way. So
And
it's
that-
kind of cool to see them doing
exactly. That helmet of hers is so sexy, I gotta say. It's very Asgardian to me.
that.
Very
The question
Norse.
is, could you get her to take her helmet off?
Yeah, I'm not gonna try because I know how tough Mandalorian women are, and I'm married, as you said. So, but yeah, probably not. She's probably pretty tough. So, hey, Nate, did you get, speaking of Jon Favreau, did you get a bit of an Iron Man feel in this episode?
Totally.
At all? Okay, and it's not just me then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
There's got
the
a very
whispering
big Iron Man.
birds.
It's his tactic. It's his approach.
Yeah.
It's his way of storytelling. Very
Yeah.
much the feel of Iron Man.
Yeah.
And Deborah Chow's the director of this one, by the way, which
Yes.
she's done quite a bit. And we know that she will be moving on, I believe, to be directing the episodes, all of them, for the Kenobi series.
Perfect. I think she did a great job. I was very, very pleased with the episode, so I'm good with that.
More good things to look forward to when it comes to Kenobi, which is great news. Let's talk more about the Grief Karga. This was something that really interested me when I was looking at this, because he's even rich. He's got the Beskar, and he brings it out and shows the Mandalorian.
Yes.
He's got this Beskar. Do you think that, I mean, the Mandalorian's a heck of a dead shot.
Yes.
He's totally a skilled shot. Do you think that he shot Grief Karga toward the end of the episode? Do you think he remembered that's where
He
the
aimed
Beskar
for it?
was? Because
Mm.
you don't get the feeling that Grief Karga really wants to do anything against the Mando. He's like still talking about, I'm your only way out of this.
Well, yeah, and he said I didn't want it
Didn't
to
want to
come
do
to
it.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think that the shot was intentional to the Beskar plates?
I think it could go either way. I think it's either that the Mando specifically aimed for the plates, or that Grief Karga put them in that specific position, knowing that it would be good to stop stuff. That was why they were where they were. But I think that it's like there's a point. I don't think it's just a throwaway scene. I think that that's important, and I don't think the Mando wanted to kill him at all.
I don't think he did
Just
either.
wanted him to go away.
I think the Mando's conscience is really coming out.
Yep.
And all this stuff with the flashbacks and how much it's really hitting him right now, there's
Yes.
something that's bubbling to the surface with the Mando, and that's, I think, activating his conscience at this point with a lot of the decisions that he's making. And it's that child that's abandoned, just like he was, not on
Yep.
purpose, but his parents killed, obviously, not directly in front of him, but behind the
Sure.
other side of
Close enough.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that kind of begs the question, like the title for this episode is The Sin, right?
Yeah.
So does that only have one meaning, like his sin of going against the bounty hunting guild, and now he's going to have to run from them pretty much forever? Or is there something more to it? You know, like is his the sin being like doing what he was supposed to do, and so he's
Right.
kind of sinning by going against what he was meant to be, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of hard to read too much into two words, but
Right.
it's interesting that they chose that as the title.
It was just a great episode. There's a lot
It
that I
was.
enjoyed about it. I have so many questions when it comes to Dr. Pershing because he is
Yes.
so protective of the child. He initially when they were giving out the bounty, he didn't want the child to be killed. He stated
Yes.
that is not what I wanted. He stated multiple times there in this episode that he's the reason the child has lived. And we also overheard the Mandalorian with his gun acting as a tuning fork of some sort to like
Yes.
get the audio of what's going on, which is very cool. That spy technology going in there. But you heard him at that point pushing Werner Herzog's character to not kill him. So what does he want and what's going on? I have so many questions.
Oh, I know. And it's so much like it's not just him not wanting to kill the child. Obviously, he has compassion. You can tell when he's at gunpoint that he's like, don't hurt him. He's just a child.
Right.
Okay. But he's also made a point of saying we've been instructed to bring him back alive. I think he's not only doing that to protect the child, maybe even until he knows the Mandalorian's coming back for him, because I think it was kind of obvious when they tried to push him out with all the stormtroopers, but because he was told to do it. I don't know.
Do you think we see him again? Do you think this is the last time we see Dr. Pershing?
No, we'll see him again for sure.
I think we see him again
because they're going to have to tie up what he was up to, because they can't just leave that hanging. I mean, we have to know why they would be looking for such an esoteric species that has such specific talents. Why? There's got to be a reason. It's not just like we like green skin or we want big fluffy ears. I mean, there's more to it than just that.
So cool. It is so cool, and I love what's going on. This is, again, I mentioned it earlier, definitely my favorite episode so far. There's only been 3, so it's not hard to find a favorite when there's only 3, but at the same time, this really came down to a heck of a showdown. It's that old Western high noon showdown where you see him walking through the streets of town, and it was shot just like a Western because it's that outlaw kind of, on the Western edge of civilization or whatever, you might want to see it as. It really had that. Civilization is not that great, not that hospitable, and so you see it just like a Western. It was so cool.
That was the Mandalorian's OK Corral.
Yeah, it totally was.
Because there was the speeder with the droid on it, like a horse. It's right by the exit to go to his ship, like horses kind of thing. You've got the dirt street. He's surrounded. It's bad news.
You got the shooters on top of the roofs as you're going through down Main Street.
Yep, it was like Tombstone, a trench city carved out of what appears to be a basaltic lava flow. If you look at the overhead shots when he's flying in on his ship, it looks like they actually carved some of the city out of a huge flow of black lava. So very interesting.
It was such a great moment when all the Mandalorians with their jetpacks fly out, and it was just, woo! I mean, I'm not going to lie, the hairs on my arm were standing up at that point. I was so into it, and I had a huge grin on my face.
Huge geek tingles. Even when I watched it subsequent times and knew it was coming, it was still like awesome. And that goes back to like, I thought it was kind of cheesy that they had the one Mandalorian, who I'm assuming was Favreau's character, supposed to be, go up and salute the Mandalorian as he left and all that.
I could not take the salute. That was so Iron Man at that point.
That's exactly what I was just
War
Machine.
Machine.
That is like so completely Iron Man. That's what really solidified it for me in my mind too, was it's like, what is this even doing in here?
And the music. I know I picked at this last time, but the music for the episode was fine for me. I've made my peace with what they've chosen as kind of that sound that you hear throughout when it comes to the soundtrack. But that ending scene, right as the ship starts to take off, this really patriotic, like American patriotic music comes into play, which I have nothing against that. I'm very patriotic, but it didn't make sense in the Star Wars world. It just took me out of the moment, and it was very War Machine from the Marvel movies.
Yeah. And now watching it watching it again after you mentioned it to me on the phone the other day, I can, as I said before, I kind of can agree with where you're going with it. I guess I would say that I think that they're trying to convey this sense of like team and oneness and like family that the Mandalorians represent, because they really are like a brotherhood, you know, kind of like a band of brothers. That's really what they come down to. And so I think that might be kind of where they were headed with that. I don't know that they really pulled it off all that well. I think that they probably could have chosen better.
Swing and a miss as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Swing and a miss. Took me right out of the moment. I was so disappointed with that because it's such an epic finish to that episode. It was awesome. And then the salute at the end, the military, U.S. military style salute. I was like, no, don't do that. Do something else, like put your fist against your chest or something. I don't know. It would make more sense to me, but oh well. It is what it is. It was a great show. I love Mandalorian. Really, yeah, I'm in for more episodes for sure. There's one last thing here.
Yes, sir.
Going back in the Mandalorian culture, what's with the Boba Fett symbol? We're seeing that same symbol that Boba Fett has.
Oh, the Mythosaur skull?
Yeah. I mean, I thought that, like, I mean, I know that Boba Fett's not an actual Mandalorian. So, I mean, clearly, he got a hold of the armor because his dad Jango got a hold of the armor. You know, his clone father, I should say. Yeah. So I want to know more about that symbol now as it ties into the world of canon at this point. So
you're killing me. So you're limiting me to canon here. Okay. So
I know.
Well, it's hard because I don't know how deeply they're going to dip into the rich history that's already been put out there on the Mandalorians in the EU that doesn't exist now as canon. And so they're kind of like people without a country at this point, you know, because Disney threw away so much that was already there, and the comics and the books and all of the stuff that's out there. The Mythosaur skull is a symbol of the Mandalore, the person who's in charge of the Mandalorians. And I think that originally, what's that?
Maybe they're sticking with that then, because we saw that symbol above the blacksmith shop.
Yeah, so that's where it comes from.
The leader.
And if I remember correctly, they all like are big on the Mythosaur. It's like a signet for the Mandalore, because the Mandalore, the original Mandalore, which I think might have been Mandalore the Ultimate or somebody like that, killed a Mythosaur, and supposedly that was like a really tough thing. And you saw in this episode where she tried to suggest that his signet should be the Mandalore. But, you know, he said, well, it wasn't a clean kill or an honorable kill or whatever, which, you know, whatever, I'll let him do what he wants with his own armor. But
and he refers to Baby Yoda as the enemy, as his enemy.
Yeah, because I think at that point he hadn't made up his mind that he was going to go back. Because I think the moment when he gets in his ship and picks the knob up off of the throttle the Baby Yoda had been playing with, I think that was the Force talking to him. Whether it was Baby Yoda doing it directly, or
you're bringing the Force into this now, huh?
Absolutely. I mean, you have the main character is interacting with one other main character who just happens to be from a very Force-sensitive species.
We think.
Well, I mean,
we've only ever seen 2 of the species
that we know of. So that's a pretty high percentage for any race, really.
Yeah.
So
okay. I wouldn't think that every one of them would be Force sensitive, but maybe they are as a culture. Maybe they are. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think everybody's connected to the Force. I mean, everybody has a connection through midichlorians to some extent or another. It's just how in tune they are with it. But I don't know. We'll find out. I'm very curious.
Okay, I'm going to switch topics on you now. That's the review of The Mandalorian Episode 3, The Sin. Can't wait for Episode 4 at this point. Yeah, so good. Really, really great way to get us all salivating at the mouth for more on this. There's an interesting theory that's going on involving The Mandalorian. This came from Reddit. Mike V431 posted new theory as to why the Mando might have a soft spot for the kid. We keep revisiting the flashback to the Mando as a kid during the Clone Wars. And I feel like we're going to see how he survived that super battle droid that found him hiding. Maybe in the final episode, we see the battle droid about to kill him, and suddenly a lightsaber blade spews from its chest. Specifically, a green lightsaber, and the Jedi that rescued him is Master Yoda himself.
You think so?
This is the theory.
This is this other person's theory.
And I was talking to my buddy Daniel Wolf, by the way, which he's at dailysuperhero.com. So check out Daniel Wolf at dailysuperhero.com. Is really good stuff going on. But he brought this up to me in a conversation. He said, this is what I now want. And this is now what I think I want. This is such a great theory that I kind of hope it's true. I'm okay if it's not, but kind of a cool theory.
It is an interesting circular thing going on.
Wait. let me put this, Mr. Science. It's an interesting hypothesis.
Yes, it is an interesting hypothesis, and as of now, unprovable. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I would love to see that happen. I think that would be epic. Obviously, to me, what was going on during those flashback scenes for the Mandalorian were times from the Purge. At least the Purge they're talking about anyway. There's been lots of Mandalorian purges because that's part of why them and the Jedi have such
Right.
antipathy towards each other. But I really think that that could be very interesting if Yoda was involved. I mean, he was kind of all over the place during the Clone Wars time
He was.
and after. So I don't know. Interesting.
It's a fun thought, and I would love it if it turns out to
Absolutely.
be true. I won't be disappointed if it's not, but it's really fun. Hey, let's get to movie news right now, and I want to
Yes,
talk
sir.
about this new TV trailer that came out for the Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, yeah.
We've been consumed by like, what are the Knights of Ren? We're starting to see some hints at it. We were all disappointed in Episode 8 that we never got to see the Knights of Ren. At least now they're correcting this problem that we had. In
Yes.
the new TV trailer, you just watched it before we went on to record this.
Yep.
The Knights of Ren in the new trailer in the Rise of Skywalker, and they look menacing.
Yes, they do.
I dig it.
That's kind of the point, right?
True.
That's so much of what they go for in that Sith type of mindset is to look scary.
It's awesome. I'm glad we're starting
It
to
is
see more of
awesome.
this, and it gives me hope that we'll get some explanations about the Knights of Ren, who they are, where they came from. Are they converts from the Jedi Academy that Master Luke Skywalker had set up, or are these just some rogue agents that came involved and that they made Kylo Ren the master of? So it'll be interesting how that all comes out.
Maybe when Kylo left the academy that Luke set up, he took people with him and turned them.
That's kind of what I thought. He probably had some sway with people because, I mean, he was a Skywalker.
Yes, and he's very charismatic, and
Right.
he's obviously able to, he gets under Rey's skin quite a bit, and I don't think that's all romantic in nature. Obviously, I think some of it is, but
You're right. I totally agree with you.
they
It's not all romantic.
obviously share a connection, and I think that part of the reason that is, and part of the reason that they're able to so strongly be connected, even across huge gulfs of space, is because theory time. I think that they're two sides of the same coin in terms of
The yin and the yang.
born of the Force, so to speak, in Rey's
Right.
case, or maybe not, but like they are the balance, because the Force, obviously, we know is all about balance.
Have you seen the Freddie Prinze meltdown when it comes to him reacting to the Force and why everyone has such a problem with understanding it?
I have not.
Okay.
Make me aware of this, please.
You need to look up Freddie Prinze Jr.
Okay.
and his meltdown about the Force. I'll send you a link. You got to check this out. And
Please
if you
do.
listening have not, maybe you're in your car right now, you can't look at your phone right now and listen to this. Or if you're on a run or working out or whatever, if you've not seen this yet, you need to make sure you get a chance to do this. But if you're just sitting there on your computer at home right now, consult the old Google and check out Freddie Prinze Jr. Force Meltdown, because the guy goes off. But he, of course, was one of the voices on Rebels, and that was Dave Filoni's show. And Dave Filoni studied at the knees of the master, George Lucas himself, who talked an awful lot about the Force and how what happens with the Force is when one rises up, another rises to meet it.
Yep.
So it's so interesting to look at that concept, and you might be onto something that because you had Snoke and Luke in existence, but Ben Solo comes along. And then he shifts to the dark side. And then there needs to be another light side that comes up to meet it. And we saw that from the very first of the sequel trilogy in Episode 7. They talk about rising to meet it. So that is all in play.
Well, and I think that it's the same exact pattern we see in The Phantom Menace, where Anakin rises to meet the rising tide of Sith that's going on that the Jedi are unable to see because of the cloud of the dark side and all that. I believe that's why the Force birthed Anakin, is to bring balance. And unfortunately, Palpatine got to him first and screwed it all up. But, oh well, that's how it goes.
Or if you look at the comic books, the most recent Vader series, did you get a chance to look at those?
I've looked at a couple.
Did you see the one where it's insinuated that Palpatine made Shmi Skywalker pregnant using the Force?
You know what? Andrew, actually, my kid, told me about a thing he was watching just yesterday, I think, about that same thing, that it was Palpatine and or Pelagius, and I think the timeline doesn't work for Pelagius, but Palpatine, causing this to happen, because they did a lot of experiments and other things, and whether they mean directly causing it in terms of a physical, making it happen, or making it happen through the Force, through what they were doing, at a distance kind of thing. I don't know, but I still agree with the theory that Palpatine's activity was what caused Anakin to become. That's what made him happen. And they say it in the movies. So
looking forward to seeing how this all plays out in episode 9, of course. And final topic of this show, let's talk about what is next for the movies. We know what's next for the TV world that's building things up for us even more, but the movies are really just kind of, I mean, let's be honest, there's no direction at this point. It's a ship that's listless at this time because we don't know what's happening. There's a lot of issues when it comes to keeping directors on board, the creative types happy and engaged with Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm. There's I'm not sure what's happening. We're not on the inside. We don't know. Maybe it's a good thing that decisions that are being made. We definitely need to look at what's going on, though, because what's next at this point? Rian Johnson immediately, like before episode 8 even came out, Disney was like, we love Rian Johnson. Kathleen Kennedy loves Rian Johnson and was like, he's on board for a trilogy of his own. That was like before episode 8 even came out. The episode came out, and then there was a lot of chatter about it. You know, it was fairly divisive. Now, a lot of that was some trolls and bots and stuff like that.
Sure.
You know, that came into play. But I mean, I'm one of those people that had a real problem with episode 8. But I'll tell you this. I think Rian Johnson's a super talented filmmaker, and I can't wait to see what he can do with his own characters. I'd like to see him leave the legacy characters alone.
Sure.
And that's and again, I don't blame him entirely because he was set up. He had to figure out a way to make it work based upon what was handed to him from episode 7. So that was created by JJ and team. And it's fun story world to play in, but I couldn't get into it. But beyond that, I've made my peace with as much as I can. I do love the idea of him playing with his own characters and building out his own Star Wars legacy beyond that. But there was a while there, it sounded like, well, Ryan's movies have been put on hold. We're all in with Game of Thrones guys. Now, Game of Thrones guys are fired or quit, walked away, as was said.
Yeah.
But, I mean, let's be real. They were fired. They were fired. So then you have Kevin Feige coming in from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the mastermind of that, saying, hey, I want to play in the sandbox. So he's in for not one episode, but one movie is what we're told.
Sure.
But also it's coming out that he's not going to be directing, or I mean, obviously not directing. He's not going to be producing this Star Wars movie anytime soon. It's something later on. So what is Disney doing now? Who is it? Rian Johnson? Is he up now? Or is it, what do you think is going on? Are they taking what the ideas were for the first Jedi from the Game of Thrones guys and saying like, well, there's some good notes here. Let's see if we can get somebody else to take this now.
Man, I don't know. It's tough to say. It's almost like you said, they're sort of
lost. What would you like to see?
What would I like to see?
Yeah.
I would like to see The Mandalorian. I would like to see it done like that because I think they're doing it right. No joke. I think that, just do what they're doing right this minute with The Mandalorian in terms of the cinematography and the directing and figuring out, how to tell a story that's succinct. Because, I mean, and we talked about it before, the episodes are short, but even though they're short, I feel like they're complete too, which is not an easy thing to get away with as a filmmaker, I have to imagine.
Yeah.
So, I really want to see that happen where they're really tying up some of these loose ends and actually making an effort to make everything make sense. And I think that this is the danger of throwing away so much previously canon stuff, is that you kind of, you cut open a lot of storylines that were fairly well tied up before, and now all of a sudden you've gouged pieces out of them and thrown them away, and you have to kind of fill some of that in. And I think that makes things harder, especially because you're asking people to forget all that stuff. And I mean directors and writers and the people who are making this content, they're supposed to just forget that this enormous EU exists and move on with whatever Disney's constrictures are that have nothing to do with being Star Wars fans necessarily, just because they bought the franchise because it's a huge moneymaker. And I mean, it's awesome. We're getting a lot of content. But I mean, when you tear apart 40 years of canon in the span of a day, it's going to make a mess. And I think that it's going to take them a while to clean that up. Now, if they continue doing what they're doing now with The Mandalorian and even continue to dip into some of the better EU stuff that they've kind of sort of hinted at that they're going to do, then I'm all aboard. I'm good.
I got an idea. And this is how I want to close the show.
Sure.
John Favreau and Dave Filoni calling in you right now. You direct the next Star Wars movie.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that too.
I think John Favreau needs to be sure that they let him keep his armor from Mandalorian 3, though. That needs to be part of his deal.
Filoni, armor, all of it. Episode 10.
Yes. Absolutely.
All right, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Force Geeks. Hey, we are out there in the social media world. You can find us on Twitter at The Force Geeks. You can also find us on Facebook, The Force Geeks. Just go and search us out. And you can also email us. You got something you want to talk about on the show, let us know about it. You can send a quick MP3 file, a question. Maybe we'll use it on the show. And that is the way to get a hold of us is via email. You can find us at theforcegeeks@gmail.com. That's right. We're using the Gmail. That's how it's working. So,
Yeah.
for Mr. Jake Scott, I'm Nate Custer. We will see you